This is the true, untold story of how love turned into scandal and fame turned into downfall. For 10 months, Darcey Silva was secretly involved in a romantic relationship with a banker named Alexander. What began as a private connection slowly turned into a deep, emotional affair. When Alexander learned about Darcey's hidden financial problems, he promised to take full responsibility for paying off her secret debt of $970,000. After that, their bond grew stronger. They spent time together at five-star hotels, sharing moments that revealed just how close they had become. A few weeks later, Darcey discovered she was pregnant. Medical tests confirmed that the baby she was carrying shared Alexander's DNA. When Georgi Rusev learned the truth, he suffered severe emotional distress. Arguments erupted, tensions escalated, and the relationship completely fell apart. Darcey eventually divorced Georgi, making her intentions clear. She said she only wanted to marry Alexander. Unable to cope with the betrayal, Georgi attempted suicide. Later, he accused Darcey of embezzling $850,000 of his personal savings and giving the money to Alexander. The case went to court, and after a long hearing, the court found Georgi's claims to be true. Darcey Silva was sentenced to 3 months in prison. This is the story of Darcey Silva and Georgi Rusev, the secret affair, and the fall of love. It all began when Darcey first met Georgi Rusev, with cameras already rolling. At the time, she was at the height of her fame. Her heartbreaks had been broadcast to the world on 90 Day Fiancé. She had cried over Jesse Meester. She had fought for Tom Brooks. Her love life had become an internet joke, but Darcey wasn't finished searching for love. Then came Georgi. He entered her life in 2020, just as the world was shutting down. A professional massage therapist and model from Bulgaria, Georgi carried a quiet intensity that immediately drew Darcey in. He didn't speak much, but when he did, his words felt thoughtful and intentional. He was the opposite of Darcey's emotional, expressive personality. They met in Washington, D.C., and within weeks, Darcey was deeply infatuated. To her, Georgi represented everything she had ever wanted: youth, beauty, mystery, and European charm. She believed he wasn't just another reality TV romance, but the man who would finally understand her. Their early days felt magical. Candlelit dinners, slow dances in luxury hotel rooms, whispered promises of forever. When TLC launched Darcey and Stacey, their relationship became the center of the show. Fans watched them share bubble baths, exchange gifts, and talk about marriage. Darcey had always been a dreamer, but with Georgi, the dream felt real. They got engaged twice. The first proposal happened during a romantic getaway. The second came after a brief breakup, meant to prove they could fix what had been broken. But behind the smiles, the cameras missed the growing tension. Georgi struggled to find stable work in the United States. His modeling opportunities slowed, and his massage clients disappeared during the pandemic. At the same time, Darcey's fashion brand, House of 11, was losing money. Arguments became more frequent. Darcey accused Georgi of being lazy and emotionally distant. Georgi accused Darcey of being controlling and critical. To the public, they looked glamorous. Behind closed doors, they were drifting apart. By late 2021, the spark was gone. Their home, once filled with laughter, turned into a place of silence and frustration. Georgi withdrew emotionally. Darcey cried constantly. Still, they kept coming back to each other. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was fear of being alone. Darcey held onto the belief that if she loved harder, everything would work out. But love built on exhaustion doesn't last. One winter evening, while Georgi was away visiting friends, Darcey attended a charity event in New York. That night changed everything. Under the warm lights of a Manhattan ballroom, she met Alexander Petrov. He didn't ask for photos. He didn't talk about reality TV. Instead, he asked about her dreams. For the first time in years, Darcey felt seen, not as a celebrity, not as a brand, but as a woman who still believed in love. That night, Georgi's place in her heart began to fade. A new chapter began, darker, richer, and far more dangerous. Fame has a way of making love feel bigger than life, but also harder to survive. For Darcey Silva and Georgi Rusev, The glitter of television slowly hit a quiet decay. By early 2022, they were living together in Connecticut, still trying to convince the world they were building a fairy tale. But behind closed doors, the love was gone. The warmth had been replaced with mistrust and exhaustion. Darcey was overwhelmed. She was raising her teenage daughters, running House of 11, filming her show, and facing constant public criticism. Every move she made was judged. Every word became a headline. Georgi struggled in a different way. He wasn't used to the attention, the cameras, or Darcey's constant need for reassurance. At first, he tried. He smiled for interviews, walked red carpets, and played the role of the perfect fiancé. But inside, resentment grew. "You love the attention more than you love me," he once said. "I just want to feel like you're proud to be with me," Darcey replied. They weren't really fighting about love. They were fighting about who they were. Money made everything worse. Georgie's lack of income embarrassed Darcey, who often paid for everything. She believed sacrifice proved love. Georgi felt controlled. Whenever he tried to work independently, Darcey questioned his intentions. "Are you with me for love or for comfort?" she snapped once during filming. "I'm with you because I believed in us," he answered quietly. But belief didn't pay the bills, and the bills kept coming. House of 11 struggled. Sales dropped. Creditors called. Rumors spread that Darcey had borrowed heavily to keep up her image. Designer clothes, luxury hotels, cosmetic procedures. The confident woman the world saw was quietly drowning in debt. Georgi noticed the change. He pulled away, not out of cruelty, but confusion. He didn't understand the pressure of fame. He only saw a woman slipping further from him, choosing appearances over real connection. Some nights, he drove for hours, staring at city lights, wondering how love could feel so lonely. Other nights, Darcey scrolled through old photos, whispering, "Maybe he was never meant to be my forever." The cameras kept filming. Fans saw tears, arguments, and reconciliations, but never the full truth. The real battle happened in silence, in sleepless nights and unspoken pain. And it was during this fragile moment that everything finally began to collapse, a time when both Darcey and Georgi were barely holding their relationship together. Fate, or perhaps temptation, stepped in. One evening, a friend invited Darcey to a high-profile charity gala in New York City. She hadn't planned to go, but something inside her whispered that she should. And there, beneath crystal chandeliers and flowing champagne, she locked eyes with a stranger who would soon rewrite her entire life. His name was Alexander Petrov. In that single moment, the cracks beneath Darcey's carefully polished life began to break wide open. That night in Manhattan felt like a dream she didn't want to wake up from. The charity gala was filled with elegance. Men in black tuxedos, women in glittering gowns, soft jazz drifting through the room. But none of it compared to the quiet confidence of the man standing alone at the bar, watching her with calm curiosity. Alexander Petrov was known in elite circles for his wealth, discretion, and old-world charm. He wasn't loud or flashy. He didn't brag. He carried himself like a man who didn't need to prove anything. That alone caught Darcey's attention. When they finally spoke, the conversation felt easy. He didn't mention 90 Day Fiancé. He didn't talk about tabloids or her fame. Instead, he asked about her dreams, her business, her daughters. For a woman used to being judged by her past, his interest felt disarming. By the end of the evening, Alexander offered to drive her home. She hesitated, aware of how it might look, but his calm sincerity made it hard to say no. Inside the quiet hum of his black Mercedes, Darcey felt something she hadn't felt in years. Calm. Over the next few weeks, they began meeting privately. First coffee, then dinners at quiet restaurants far from cameras. Alexander was unlike any man Darcey had dated before. He listened more than he spoke. He noticed small details, her nervous laugh, her tired eyes, the way she kept checking her phone for messages that never came. Georgi sensed something had changed, but couldn't explain it. Darcey had grown distant, distracted. She blamed work, family, stress. But deep down, she was slipping into something dangerous, an emotional escape that felt safer than the broken love waiting for her at home. Alexander's world was structured, successful, and calm. He showed her what stability felt like. Private jets, fine dining, penthouse views of the city. But more than the luxury, he made her feel valued, not as a reality star, but as a woman. One night, Darcey confessed the truth she had been hiding. Her company was drowning in debt. Years of expansion, production costs, and lifestyle spending had spiraled out of control. The number shocked even her. Nearly $970,000 owed to multiple creditors. Alexander didn't react. He simply reached across the table and took her hand. "You've carried too much for too long," he said. "Let me take care of it." Those words broke her defenses. It was no longer love at first sight. It was dependence. He began quietly paying off parts of her debt, wiring money through his company to settle accounts. Darcey told herself it was temporary, just help from a friend. But deep down, she knew it was something far more serious. By the time Georgi noticed she was spending more nights in New York than Connecticut, it was already too late. Darcey Silva, once the hopeless romantic searching for forever, had stepped into a story that would soon destroy everything she had built. Because Alexander Petrov wasn't just her secret. He was becoming her fate. What started as friendship soon crossed every invisible line. Darcey had promised herself she wouldn't fall again. Not after all the public heartbreaks. But Alexander was different. He didn't chase fame. He didn't seek attention. He offered something far more dangerous. Stability wrapped in secrecy. At first, it was lunches and phone calls. Then came late-night meetings in luxury hotels booked under false names. Darcey used the alias Alina West. Alexander handled everything else. The first time they shared a room, there were no cameras, no producers, no makeup teams. Just two people trying to escape their lives. He made her feel adored, but more than that, protected. When she cried about Georgi's silence or the pressure of constant judgment, Alexander listened. "You don't owe anyone your pain," he told her once. "You deserve to live without proving anything." For a woman who had spent years performing her emotions for the world, those words felt like oxygen. Soon, Darcey began spending entire weekends in New York. Georgi believed she was handling business deals or production for House of 11. In reality, she was living a second life. Champagne breakfasts, designer gifts, whispered promises in dark hotel rooms. Alexander's influence grew quickly. He encouraged her to step back from filming and focus on herself. He paid off overdue taxes, closed credit lines, and promised to handle the rest. And he did. Within 2 months, more than half of her $970,000 debt was gone. Darcey was stunned. No man had ever done that for her. Not Jesse, not Tom, not Georgi. Gratitude slowly blurred into love. One evening, sitting in a corner suite at the Plaza Hotel overlooking Central Park, Alexander poured her a glass of wine and spoke softly. "I don't want to be your secret anymore." Darcey froze. She knew the risk. If this relationship came out, everything would collapse. The fans, the tabloids, the producers, Georgi. But temptation spoke louder than reason. "Then don't be," she whispered. From that moment, the affair became a full romance. They traveled together under private bookings and false names. Miami, Paris, Dubai. Each trip pulled them closer. Each secret made them bolder. But the thrill came with guilt. Some nights, when Alexander slept, Darcey stared at the ceiling, her heart racing, whispering to herself, "What am I doing?" Back in Connecticut, Georgi noticed small changes. The unfamiliar cologne. The luxury watch she claimed was a brand gift. The quiet smile when she checked her phone. Something was wrong. Darcey, meanwhile, was lost in a fantasy she knew couldn't last. Because love built in shadows always finds the light. And when it did, it wouldn't just end her marriage. It would change her life forever. The deeper Darcey fell into Alexander's world, the harder it became to return to her own. He surrounded her with luxury. Private dinners overlooking Manhattan. Designer gifts. Handwritten notes that read, "You're safe now." To the public, she was still Georgi Rusev's fiancé. But behind the polished social media posts and rehearsed interviews, she was living two lives. One built on reality TV illusion, the other on secret indulgence. At first, she told herself she deserved it. After years of heartbreak and humiliation, hadn't she earned happiness? Alexander made everything feel simple. He spoke calmly, handled her finances, planned her days, and hired advisors in her name. The chaos of her relationship with Georgie faded, replaced by expensive calm. But peace, like everything else, always comes at a price. The price of that calm revealed itself slowly, almost gently at first. Darcey didn't notice it right away. She was too wrapped in the comfort Alexander provided, the quiet assurance that someone else was finally in control. Bills stopped arriving. Calls from creditors ended. The constant fear that had lived in her chest for years softened. For the first time in a long time, she could breathe. But with every problem Alexander solved, Darcey gave up a little more of herself. He began making decisions for her, small at first. Which meetings she should cancel, which friends she should avoid, when it might be better to stay off camera. He framed it all as protection. And Darcey, exhausted from years of chaos, welcomed it. Georgie, meanwhile, felt himself slipping further outside her world. Conversations became shorter. Touch felt distant. When he asked what was wrong, Darcey snapped or shut down. She no longer cried in front of him. Her emotions, once overwhelming, were now carefully guarded. "You don't need me anymore," Georgie said one night, his voice barely above a whisper. Darcey didn't answer. Silence had become her defense. The distance between them grew unbearable. Georgie tried harder, cooking dinners, planning trips, offering to fix things. But every effort felt too late. Darcey had already emotionally left. Her heart now belonged to a man who existed in shadows and hotel rooms. Eventually, Georgie confronted her. He asked directly if there was someone else. Darcey denied it at first, her voice steady but cold. She told him he was paranoid, insecure, imagining things. The lie came easily, and that scared her more than the truth. But lies have weight, and eventually they crush everything beneath them. The truth surfaced in fragments. A receipt left behind, a message seen too late, a name that didn't belong. When Georgie finally realized what was happening, the betrayal hit him like a physical blow. The argument that followed was explosive. Years of resentment, confusion, and pain spilled out in one night. Darcey didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She simply said the words that ended everything. "I don't love you anymore." For Georgie, the world collapsed. He had given up his home, his stability, his pride, believing in a future that no longer existed. The woman he thought he was building a life with had been living another life right beside him. Darcey moved out soon after. The divorce came quickly, cold, and final. She didn't look back. In her mind, she was choosing happiness. She told herself this pain was necessary, that sometimes love required destruction before rebirth. Alexander welcomed her fully into his world. No more hiding. No more excuses. He rented her an apartment in New York, paid for new wardrobes, surrounded her with people who praised her strength and admired her transformation. But Georgie was unraveling. The loss of Darcey, the public humiliation, and the feeling of being used pushed him into darkness. He withdrew from friends. He stopped working. Nights blurred into days filled with silence and despair. Eventually, overwhelmed by shame and heartbreak, he attempted to take his own life. He survived, and when he did, something inside him hardened. From that place of pain, Georgie began to look back at everything more clearly. He reviewed bank statements, old transfers, missing savings, numbers that no longer added up. Slowly, a terrifying picture formed. Money he had saved for years was gone. When confronted, Darcey denied everything. She claimed misunderstandings, shared expenses, joint decisions. But Georgie was no longer confused or quiet. This time he fought back. He accused Darcey of taking $850,000 of his savings and giving it to Alexander. The accusation exploded publicly. Fans were shocked. Media outlets rushed to cover the scandal. Darcey, once seen as a tragic romantic, was now painted as something far darker. A woman who betrayed not just love, but trust. The case went to court. Inside the courtroom, the fantasy Darcey had built began to crumble. Financial records were examined, transfers traced, patterns exposed. Alexander stayed mostly silent, his lawyers sharp and distant. He had protected himself well. Darcey sat alone. The woman who once lived under bright lights now faced harsh judgment under unforgiving ones. Every luxury, every secret meeting, every choice was dissected. The calm she had once craved was replaced by fear. The court ruled in Georgi's favor. Darcey Silva was found guilty of embezzling $850,000. She was sentenced to 3 months in prison. The sentence echoed louder than any applause she had ever received. Alexander disappeared quietly from her life,